Now, sometimes the greatest blessings in our lives can end up becoming our greatest frustrations. The things that we prayed for and we wanted the most can end up becoming the things that frustrate us the most. Maybe you prayed for a job and God finally blessed you with it, and it was amazing, and you got that first paycheck and you were so happy, but eventually that job ended up starting to feel like work. Or maybe you even have prayed for a spouse and you just wanted to be married, and you finally got to that place in life, and then that person becomes the person that you hate the most. You see, our greatest blessings in our lives can also become our greatest frustrations. And the reason that this happens is because sometimes our expectations don't line up with reality. Now, what I'm reminded of, because I'm not married and I have a job, but I still like it. It's cool. I work here, so I like you guys. But what was I even saying? Oh yes, I haven't experienced all those things in my life yet. But one thing that I'm reminded of, and you guys can probably remember this, is when I took my driving test to get my driver's license. Now that didn't quite go as expected. Can anyone relate? Maybe you failed the first time. It took you a few times. Yes, good times, right? So now this is kind of embarrassing. If you laugh at me, it's fine. I'm used to it by now. But see, I didn't get my license until a little later on in life. I got it way after my friends, and they still make fun of me to this day because of this. But my senior year in high school, I had my little sister giving me rides to school. That is about as humiliating as things can get. And what made it worse is that we would pull up to Monachi and she'd be blasting like Beyonce and Justin Bieber. And the sad thing is that I started to get used to it and like it, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But you see, the same thing that kept me from getting my license has been the same thing that I've struggled with all my life. It's been the same thing that's kept me from ever making a real change in my life. And what it was fear. Fear has followed me throughout my whole life. And maybe that's a healthy fear. Maybe you don't want to just jump into a car and have no experience and drive down the road. That's probably a healthy fear, and that was okay. But it was keeping me from progressing in life, to getting past that thing in my life that I wanted to have, yet I was so scared to get it. So back to my driving test. How many of you guys can remember that, right? Your driving test. Now I was kind of confident going into it because I got a little bit of experience before, which was good. My grandpa Dwight took me out driving, and Richard took me out driving. I think Louie took me a couple times. And my mom also took me only one time, though, and never again. That was like the worst experience of my life. She was stressed. She stressed me out more than like she was stressed out. It was bad. But you see, now what I do remember about my driving test is that it took a great amount of faith for me to even get to that point. And I want to point out this, is that it's important for us to have a childlike faith sometimes. It's important for us to trust God with everything that we have. It's important for us to follow Him and to know that it's in His presence, the presence of our Father, that we will feel the safest. And I want you guys to know that it is good to have a childlike faith, but what's dangerous sometimes is when we have childish expectations. When our expectations are so unrealistic that we end up being disappointed time and time again. So, having the wrong expectations can actually destroy your faith. Because you want to believe in one thing, and you're so excited about this one thing that you want so bad, but when it doesn't go as expected, it can destroy faith, and it can cause you to not want to believe in something again. So I don't remember much from my test because I was so nervous that day, and all I know is that the lady who was giving me the test, she was playing tricks on me. She was giving me trick questions. She was making me do some crazy stuff. What she had me do is, at the very beginning, I got in the car and she had me test the blinkers. Now, I thought I was pretty confident in that, but when I flipped the switch, I heard a scraping sound, and I looked around, and I was starting to panic because I didn't know where it was coming from, and she was just staring at me like, "Can you fix this? Do something about this." And it wasn't until I looked up that I realized that I had actually turned the windshield wipers on. Now, you see, sometimes we get so caught up in our fear, maybe our fear of trying something new, that because every new experience comes with new expectations. You see, and when what we expected doesn't happen, a lot of times fear can take over. And I was so panicked in that moment, I didn't even realize that it was just the simplest mistake that I had made. And I went through the rest of that test so miserable because I already felt like I had failed because the smallest thing didn't go as I expected. And see, that test would have been so much more relaxing if I would have just said, "You know what, God? Even if I make a mistake, even if things don't go as I expected, even if things don't go perfectly, I trust you, God, because I know that I've put in the work. I know that I've done everything I could do to be prepared for this. So now I'm trusting in you, God. I'm giving everything, every fear, every worry, every doubt that I have in myself, and I'm giving it to you." Can you guys help me invite Pastor Louie up to the stage? He's going to take this over. Thank you, guys.
All right, great job, Pastor Donnie. Hey, how many of y'all remember getting gifts, right? And see, here's the thing about Christmas. When I was a kid, I don't know if it was the same for you, but when I was a kid, like, I would try to figure out what was inside of the gift. You know what I'm saying? Like Mom would always wrap it really clean. My mom was a professional wrapper, man. She did so good at wrapping these things. They were always really pretty. So I was a shaker. I would kind of shake the box. Do we have any shakers in the house? You would shake your gifts. You know what I'm saying? Anyone in the house? All right. How many of y'all guys would do what I would do? I would actually weigh it. I would weigh it. I'm like, okay, cool. And I would shake it a little bit. I'd weigh it. Then when we'd go to Walmart, or actually at the time it was Kmart, and I would find a gift that I think it was about the same size, and I'd weigh it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm getting for Christmas, right? And then you build up this expectation of what you think you might be getting. Now, some of us were a lot smarter than what I was. I wasn't that good. I think my wife did this, but how many of y'all would unwrap your gifts, look at them, then rewrap them again? Anyone in the house that did that? So some of y'all are sneaky, man, wicked people. All right, so, but see, here's the thing about gifts. About sometimes God has blessings in our lives that we still haven't really unwrapped yet. There's something that's in front of you, like Pastor Donnie was saying. Sometimes it's a new job. Sometimes it's maybe you made the team. Maybe you had your first child, and then all of a sudden you have this blessing that you still don't know all the ramifications that come with it. You know, a lot of things in life do not come with instructions. How many of y'all know what I'm talking about, right? And all of a sudden you have these expectations of what it is. Now, the part that is disappointing to you and me, you know what it is? It's the fact that our experience doesn't always measure up to our expectation, and then we're left with disappointment. And then we're upset, and then we're, struggling to figure out, why, God, why? Why didn't I get this? Why didn't I get what I wanted? And in the scriptures, we have a few characters that are unfolded in the opening chapters of Matthew and Luke. And this is the Christmas story when God was going to give the greatest gift to the world that, the greatest gift that the world has ever seen. And you have these characters that are viewing this gift in different perspectives, different expectations. And I'm going to kind of walk you through some of these characters in this story. We have the shepherds. Everyone say shepherds. We had the shepherds that were keeping watch over the sheep, and it makes sense. I mean, they're making sure that their flock, all their sheep, aren't being eaten by wolves. It makes sense. They were keeping watch over their sheep. We have the wise men who were searching. We have a king who felt threatened because of this gift that was going to, because this king, King Herod, he had heard all these stories. and there's prophecies and these rumors about a king that was gonna be born. He was gonna be labeled the King of Kings, and he felt like he was gonna be dethroned, right? So he felt threatened about the gift. We have the innkeeper that was overwhelmed. It was just a bunch of people in the inn, and as many of y'all know, Mary and Joseph didn't have the baby in the inn. They had it in the stable. So essentially, that a lot of Bible scholars believe that they had the baby in a cave, which is crazy. I mean, imagine having your baby in a cave and no like medication or anything like that. That's crazy, right? I mean, and it's in a cave, man. So that was what happened. And we have a young couple who was expecting, but they didn't know what to expect. And see, many times in our lives, we have these expectations of what we think is going to be taking place. And one thing that we can learn from each of these characters is, again, that when our experience falls short of our expectation, we can experience disappointment. And you see, with the shepherds that were watching overnight, you know what they were what they were expecting? They were expecting trouble. They were expecting wolves to show up. They were expecting wolves to come in and take all their sheep out or whatever. So they were expecting trouble. Now, some of us, when we expect trouble, it's usually because we've been disappointed before. Dude, I know people, and you know people, and maybe this is you, that they grew up fighting their whole life. So everything that they do in life is a fight. Anytime somebody says something challenging, it's a fight. Fight on, man. And that's what happens. Now, some of us are blessed with what I call an RDF, a resting ditch face. Now, you can replace the words if you like, but you look like you fell in a ditch and you're stuck, and your face is permanently marred for life. And your resting face is just like, I'm going to murder you. Like, that's your face. You know what I'm saying? If you're sitting next to somebody that you think might have that, or even just do this anyways, just nudge the person next to you. Say, please smile every now and then. Just tell them that. Tell your neighbor to smile every now and then. Because here's what happens with some of y'all that have RDFs, that have a resting ditch face, like you fell in a ditch and you can't get out. Many times you're going to encounter people. You have the blessing of encountering people who are looking for a fight. People that are expecting trouble. And when they look at you in this resting ditch face that I've got to say, and I've got to enunciate very well, when they look at this face, they look at you and they go, what? Why are you looking at me like that for? What? Okay, it's on there. Let me take off my earrings, put down my baby, and all of a sudden you get in this big old brawl in Walmart on Black Friday. And why? Because, of the face. But see, that's the thing. What happens when people have, when people are expecting trouble, somewhere along the way, when we experience disappointment, we view the world through disappointment. When we experience trouble our whole lives, we find trouble in every bush, and sometimes we end up creating the trouble that we're trying to avoid. And it's all based on expectations. We can learn something from the wise men. They were expecting power and influence. I mean, it makes sense. They're going by the prophecy of this king that was going to be the King of Kings, and they were looking for power and influence, and instead they encountered humility. They encountered a baby, right? It was like a complete 180 of what they thought was going to be. And in fact, if you follow the scriptures with this gift that God gave the world named Jesus, as he grows up into this man, and you go 33 years later when he's hanging on a cross, one criminal to his left, one criminal to his right, both hanging, all there, and one criminal looks over and he says, aren't you the Son of God? You say that you're the King of Kings. Get yourself off this cross. Why? Because if that's what my expectations are that you're going to be this, and this is what you're going to do in my life, and that's how we get in trouble. That's how we get disappointed. We get discouraged because we encounter a God that has a different plan than what we thought was supposed to be. And we have King Herod here, who was expecting competition. Some of y'all love to be competitive. How many of y'all are sitting next to someone who's really, really competitive? Huh? You're sitting someone who's really competitive. Now, some of y'all are super competitive, and there's nothing wrong with competition, man. I love it. It's great. But King Herod in the scriptures, he was expecting competition because of the prophecies, of the rumors, of what people were saying. Behind closed doors, people were talking about this king that was going to just take over and I mean, come on. How insecure do you have to be threatened by a baby, right? I mean, seriously, dude, he was so threatened by a baby that he wanted to wipe out all the firstborns, all of them. It's like, you know what? I don't know who this baby is, so let's just kill all the firstborn babies. I mean, he was really, really insecure, very threatened. I mean, and you know what? I don't know King Herod's story too well in regards to his personal life, but I almost wonder if maybe King Herod was dealing with disappointment in his own life. Maybe he had disappointed himself early on. Maybe this is just who he was as he was growing up, experiencing the world through disappointment. And when you see the world through disappointment, and especially when you're seeing the world through competition, I've talked to men and women who are jealous of their children. They're jealous of their children because all of a sudden their children, before, when they first got married, it was all about them. They went out all the time, and I get that. You got to make time for that even after you have kids. But then, husband or wife will get jealous of their children because they're getting more time. Dude, I've talked to men and women, and if we could be honest, I think we've all probably been there at some time. But I've talked to men and women that were jealous of the dog. It was like, what the heck? You spend more time with the dog than you do with me. Dog gets petted more than I do, and they spend more time with the cat. You love the cat more than me, don't you? And all of a sudden, we have this expectation of what things were supposed to be. We see the world through disappointment glasses, and everything is seen as competition. And listen, man, there's moments where God will have a blessing in your life, and if you're not careful, your expectations are unrealistic, this will become the biggest frustration that you've ever felt in your entire life. The innkeeper was really interesting. He wasn't really expecting anything. The innkeeper was full. Mary and Joseph were trying to, find some room where they can have this baby. She's like just out here waddling, oh my God, I'm gonna have this child. And he doesn't make room for her. He's like, you know what, just go out into the stable with the animals. You'll be good there, And so he missed it because here's the thing. Isn't it funny how sometimes we get so busy, especially during the holidays, that if we're not careful, and maybe you've been here before because I know I have, if we're not careful, we're going to miss the blessings that God has for us during this holiday season because we're so dang busy. We got to get things perfect. Everything's got to look good. Everything's got to be right on point. And dude, I remember one time, it took me back. My wife and I, when we were trying to have our son, we had to do in vitro fertilization. Many of you already know that. And I remember I was working long hours. I was working here at the church, and we have a side business, and I was doing a lot of hours there. I was working over 100 hours a week, trying to make sure that we can afford what we had to do. Thank God we had people in our lives that were helping us along the way, because we never would have made it without you guys. But I remember just working long hours, and I remember she had a conversation with me one time, and she goes, I appreciate what you're doing. I do. I appreciate it. And you've got us this far, but the thing that I need you to know right now is you're constantly looking at the future, always thinking about what's next and what bills got to be paid and how we're going to get to have this child. That what I really need from you right now is I need you to be with me in the moment. I need you to be here right now. Cry with me now. Sit with me now. Hold me now. And I remember just taking me back because I was like the innkeeper that was just so busy that he missed. The innkeeper, man, he could have had this gift born in his house, but he missed it because he was so dang busy. Sometimes being busy doesn't mean we're successful, Some of us, we just can't sit down long enough to enjoy life occasionally, But be careful that we don't miss it. And for Mary and Joseph, they were expecting a better place to have a baby. It was an unideal situation. It wasn't a good situation, obviously, having a baby in a cave. But yet, what they didn't really see at the moment was how great this baby would change the world and the impact that their son would have on the entire world. It's incredible. It's incredible. See, but here's the thing. When we view the world through disappointment, we will always be unhappy with our destination. So instead, when we look at the expectations of God, because there are times, guys, I get it, man, I've been there, I've done that, even recently, in recent days, where we're trying to buy a house and all this stuff, and finally, we found a house, and now we're in escrow. It's exciting. We're like, oh my God, it's amazing. But I remember in the beginning stages, I'm like, all right, God, here's what we want. We want A, B, C, and D, and it wasn't happening, and it wasn't going, and we had to wait several years to even look at a house, and you know how that gets. You get disappointed because I expected God to show up a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I've come to realize, and I'm realizing more every day, is in those moments in my life when God doesn't do what I want, I got to expect God's going to show me more of who he is. You know what I'm saying? Because God isn't just Santa Claus that's going to give us everything. God has an exact plan for your life. And instead of expecting all these things, God, this is what I'm expecting the box to be. No. It's instead is, God, show me who you are. Because if I know more of who you are, I know that I'm going to trust my Father. I know that he's going to walk me through this. I know that no matter what kind of difficulty comes my way, he's going to bring me through. I will overcome because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So instead of viewing the world through disappointment and our expectations based off of that, let's view the world by the simple fact that God is with us, and all those unmet expectations that we might have, unrealistic expectations, we can know that we have a Father that we can trust that's going to bring us through, and we're going to be able to see the blessing unwrapped right in front of us as long as we don't lose heart. So that's it. Now listen. I know some of us were expecting to hear Pastor Dave today, okay? We're expecting that. And if we're not careful, we will miss the blessing that comes our way. Because I get it, man. I remember when I first started speaking here at New Life, 15 years ago, I'd get to the stage and people would be like, oh, Pastor's not speaking? Where are you at? Oh, he ain't here. Okay, bye. And they'd walk out the door. I'm like, oh, okay. That's cool. It was just, but I get it. People have expectations. And today what I want to share with you is you weren't expecting to hear from myself or Pastor Donnie. You were expecting to hear from Pastor Dave. But if you will have your heart wide open to what God is doing, you're going to feel God's presence, and he's going to speak directly to your situation. And now your expectations will be met because Pastor Dave is speaking today. Can you welcome Pastor Dave to the stage right now, please?
All right. Thank you, Pastor Louie. Okay. They're helping me out today because I've had that flu. Anybody had that flu? Boy, it is vicious, man. It is vicious. I mean, I think I coughed up 2 or 3 demons or something. It was just nasty stuff. I mean, I know this is nasty, but, you blow your nose, you go, how can that much stuff be in my head without gray matter, Earlier in the first service, Dylan was making fun of me. Because I did a driving test like this. Anybody do a driving test like this? He said he did his with a computer, not in the olden days. So, but I've actually watched Dylan drive, and you're still not good at it. Matter of fact, I'm going to really hurt Dylan's feelings really bad right now. Darcy's still a better driver than you. Anyway, thank you guys for helping us out here today. And it is Christmas season. Don't you love the Christmas season? It is ripe with expectations. And I know it took me a while to figure this out, but Loretta is a re-wrapper. Any re-wrappers? You open it up, check it all out, and then you re-wrap it. Because rather than just peeking, she actually rewrapped the whole thing. And it took me a few years, but because I finally one day I looked at it and I realized I'm not that good. And when she wraps it, she's really good. And so I just noticed that it looked better. It's like, hey, wait a second. But anyway, because she didn't want to be disappointed. But when I learned to drive, it was back in the days where everybody had to, whatever you drove, it had a clutch. And so when it was coming my time and I was getting ready to drive, of course, you want to do well. So I'm watching. You ever study people driving with a clutch? You're like, got to get the rhythm down, right? Get this. So I watch how that works, and I think, I got this. And we had an old truck in the backyard. And I would go back there to the backyard with the old truck that didn't run, and I would practice driving. Anybody ever practice driving? Had the 3 on the tree, and so I'd shift, and I made motor noises and everything. Did the clutch thing down, man, I got this. So here it is, and finally my chance to drive. I get behind the driver's seat, 65 Ford Falcon, 3 on the tree. And I did the herky-jerky. Anybody know the herky-jerky? I had no idea this was coming. So we actually moved forward, kind of. We just did the, And it was funny. My dad was in the passenger seat. He was trying to shut it off, But I expected that I had this mastered. It was going to go great. It was just wonderful. but I had no idea what I was getting into. See, that's why we're talking about expectations. So when we're talking about the Christmas season, it's ripe with expectation. We have expectations for family. We have expectations for people. We have expectations on the job. We have expectations for the season and the emotion. And oftentimes our expectations aren't met, and it leaves us disappointed. There's only one entity that actually knows the future at all, and it's not you. It's only God. And so what we do is we set ourselves up for disappointment, and then we reflect this disappointment on the world around us. Isn't that true? Anybody ever be in a mood when you're not supposed to be in a mood? Come on now, come on. I will point you out. I will point you out. Right, Dan? I will. And so we kind of set ourselves up. So I want to talk about a story in John chapter 5. Because if we build our life on the fragile, we'll fail. If we build our life on a solid foundation, we will flourish. Okay? Whenever you build your life on the fragile things that are unpredictable, failure is almost certain. But if you go through the trouble to build something solid, then you'll flourish. It's in John chapter 5 where there's this pool. Not a swimming pool, it's just this kind of a little pond kind of thing. And a lot of sick people were sitting around this pool. And these people they were crippled, and they had diseases, all kinds of crippled people around this pool. And they were waiting for the water to be stirred up by an angel. And if the water was stirred up by an angel, then the first one in, they were healed of whatever illness that they had. So there's a multitude of people around this pool. Now here's the deal. This one guy had been there for 38 years. 38 years waiting for his turn. Everybody say, my turn. 38 years waiting for my turn. And that's where that story picks up. Now here's where this really gets weird. If anybody have the New International Version? That's the Bible you read? In the New International Version, as you're reading through there in John chapter 5, there's no verse 4. You read verse 3 and it skips verse 4, and you read verse 5. And I remember reading that thinking, what happened? Like an editor problem or something like that? And so that's when I realized what it says in verse 4. It says that an angel would come down from time to time, and he would stir the waters. And when the angel stirred the waters, whoever got in first, that person was healed. Now, the reason it's not in the New International Version, it's only in some, because that actually did not happen. That's not true. Because God does not work that way. God doesn't say, okay, blah, 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 first one in gets healed, all the rest of you guys are suckers. God doesn't work that way. Now, we work that way. Oh, I got to get mine. I got to take advantage of the moment, jump on into this kind of thing. We think that way. Now, what actually happened was this is an artesian spring that's fed from the bottom of the pool, and every once in a while there's an air bubble. And so the waters stir. Now, because they didn't understand it, they determined that it must be an angel. How many of you guys remember the angel on Olive? Remember the angel on Olive? Remember that? There were crowds gathered around, and there was candles all over the place, and every night about dark, it looked like it was a drive-in theater. People just like. So this reflection of light off a window, and they're saying it was an angel. Well, the guy that owned the business across the street discovered it was his parking lot lights. There was a reflection. So one night when everybody was gathered around and they were lighting candles, this smart aleck guy turned off the angel. What do you know? Just turned off the lights. There goes the angel. See, because what happens is whenever we don't understand something, we come up with reasons. We come up with stuff and say, well, it must be like this. That's how we set ourselves up for disappointment, because it doesn't work that way. I remember as a kid, my dad was practicing relationships. That's a good way to put that, don't you think? He was in like stage 2 or something like that, and so he he moved in with this lady that had teenage kids. Okay? And then he moved all of us in with him. Of course, we were all just like midgets, small people. And so we moved into this 2-story house. There was a rundown old rickety 2-story house, and it just the place was haunted. Anybody ever live in a haunted house? It just freaks you out. I mean, doors would open. There'd be weird noises, thumps, these eerie like screeching sounds. I mean, we were freaked out. And it wasn't until my brother and I were talking in our 30s, 20-something years later, when it dawned on us, those teenagers were messing with us. Yeah, these 2 terrified little boys, they were having the time of their lives. Watch them wet the bed this time. See, because when we don't understand something, because it doesn't go the way that we expect it to go, oftentimes we come up with this is how it should work, and we're left waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's never our turn, it's never our time, it never goes that way. Nothing ever changes. And what happens when it goes that way, what happens to us is our heart gets hard, our spirit gets cold, our faith dries up. Am I talking to you yet? See, here's the thing. When Jesus told the story of the man that built his house in the sand, the man that built his house on the rock, anybody can build on something that doesn't matter. It doesn't take any work. But my friends, if you're going to build a life on a solid foundation, you're going to have to do some digging. You got to dig past all the trash in your life. You got to dig past all the dirt that's been piled up on your home. You got to dig past all of this stuff and get down to the solid foundation. And God said, here, start here. Start on truth. Start on reality, and I can build on that. See, because here's the problem. That guy that had been laying there for 38 years, waiting for something that was never going to happen. All it did was make him stuck. When the answer he'd been looking for his whole life was standing right next to him. So Jesus looks down and he asks this guy a question I'm going to ask you. Do you want to be made well? Do you want to get past what you're stuck in? Do you want to get beyond what's holding you back? And he came back with a classic excuse I think a lot of us use. I don't have anybody to help me. If I just had the right guy, if I just had the right girl, if I just had the right job, if I lived in the right neighborhood, if I just didn't have to drive this little piece of stuffed car. The problem is not your circumstances. The problem isn't your relationships. The problem is you're expecting a broken world to give you unbroken responses, and it doesn't work. We're broken people. All of us are broken people. And broken people can't make other broken people unbroken. It's impossible. Say, look, here's how we think. Well, I'm jacked up, you're jacked up. If we get together, we won't be jacked up. Does that sound as dumb as it did to me? Oh yeah, we got these 2 imperfect, broken, jacked up people, and we're going to put them together and they'll live happily ever after. Stop watching those Christmas movies. It's messing you up. So what do? What do broken people do when the waters don't move? Instead of looking down at the waters, look up into the face of Jesus. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior. A Savior. He will save you from your stuckness. He will save you from your brokenness. He will save you from your messed upness. I'm making words up now. The shepherds found a Savior when they were looking for trouble. The wise men found humility when they were looking for influence. Herod found truth when he was insecure. The innkeeper found that God can do anything, even if he starts with nothing. And Mary and Joseph found out that God is doing so much more than they could ever even imagine. Are you looking for a Savior today? You're looking for a Savior that'll get you past your stuckness, that'll get you past the stuff that's holding you back? Then, my friend, you've come to the right place. Could I get you to bow your heads and close your eyes for just a moment, please, this morning? I just wonder if there's any people today that you're approaching the holiday season, and because things aren't going the way that you hope that they will, you feel stuck. Anybody feel stuck this morning? Just show me your hands. Say, Pastor, that's me, man. I feel like my life is stuck. I feel like my relationships are stuck. I feel like things aren't moving in my life. I feel like my career, I'm just going nowhere. I want to do more. See, and matter of fact, there's people in this room today, you say, I want to go back to school, but I don't see how that's possible. You feel like I'm talking to you? Just show me your hand real quick. Thank you. Thank you. I just wonder today if there's people that are just really disappointed with the direction things are going. You know, you would say, you know, it just doesn't feel like I thought it would. Just not going good. I'm miserable. I just don't like it. Show me your hand real quick. Say, that's me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody here feel like God's like a million miles away? Show me your hand. Thanks. Could y'all stand this morning, please? You see, that guy was sitting by the waters and waiting for his wow moment. God rarely shows up in the wow. Rarely. But where God does show up is in the daily. I'm going to challenge you today to start looking at your life in a completely different light. Start looking for little hints of God's glory. Little glimmers of hope. Have I got your attention? A glimmer of hope, like, you know, God, I just really need my finances to turn around. And you get asked to work one day of overtime. That's a glimmer of hope. Or you get a rebate for something you can't even remember buying. Look for glimmers of hope to increase your faith. Stop waiting for the waters to bubble. Stop asking God, when is it going to be my turn? Because your turn started the moment Jesus said, it is finished. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to pray. And some of you this morning, you feel like you're just walking through this season alone. Don't do that. Let's partner with you. We want to join with you. Here's what I know. This is what the angel said. They said, we bring you tidings of great joy. If there's anything in your life that is trying to rob your joy, it's time for you to lock it down. All right? Don't let anything steal your joy. You guys got me? Sickness, disease, relational problems, financial issues, job issues, where you're living, all this. Don't let it steal your joy, because your joy has nothing to do with that. For he is born this day in the city of David, a Savior. What a cool title. Savior.